Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and we've had some amazing topics on this podcast, some amazing people who shared with us incredible life stories. We've had Paul Sokol talking about living with borderline personality disorder. We've had Brett Fairborn talking about what it was like to leave the Mormon church and his experience around there. And today we're going to go into another topic that you might perceive to be one of those deep, dark topics, which is the relationship of childhood trauma and how that relates to how you are living as an adult and how it is addressing your business performance. Now, to talk through this idea with me, we have Kari Owens, among other things. She's my fiance, woohoo! And also, she is a lifestyle coach who helps people live richer, more fuller lives in a wide variety of ways. And Kari, I can't think of someone better to talk through this with in public than you, my love.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah. So let's take just one example. And my intention here is that all the folks listening, you have your own kinds of childhood trauma. I'm just going to take one example from my childhood, and we're going to talk through it a bit about how to become more aware of how this may be impacting my performance, both as an adult human being, but also as an entrepreneur. And Kari, who did not know we were going to be discussing this topic until about 2 minutes ago, is going to go just talk through this with us a little bit and help bring up some good questions to go observe and think about and process through how some of these earlier things might be impacting us. Now, in the moral words of Seth Godin, this might not work. So buckle up. So here's the scenario. In middle school, like many middle school aged boys, I was physically bullied, kicked under a table, whipped in a locker room, shoved into the gravel between class, and that left a mark. And the most obvious mark is that I then later in my life got into martial arts and decided I was going to become so strong that there could be no bullying around me. Insert, I don't know, bulging bicep emoji here or something like that. The whole, I'm going to get stronger so I can't be hurt again. Now, Kari, that's a pretty common way adults process childhood trauma, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm going to defend myself and those around me.
Yeah, we also do something similar, I think, and something that can relate to this a bit is like if you think about having your heart broken or having been in a really toxic relationship, you might have the thought of, well, I'm never going to love again, or I'm never going to get in a relationship again, or I'm going to be so independent. We go towards the polar opposite. I'm going to be so independent that I don't need to rely on anyone. I won't have to be in a relationship. No one will ever hurt me again.
That's just what I was thinking. I'm not going to let anyone hurt me again.
Yeah.
But let's talk about how that manifests in our adult lives, and especially as entrepreneurs. Now, as long as we're involving relationships going poorly, let's involve bankruptcy, or let's involve not having the cash to pay the bills. If anyone here has ever had to put stuff on credit cards because they just didn't have the cash and, a client went away suddenly, and then suddenly, oh no, can't pay the bills this month, can't feed the kids, whatever, some kind of trauma. How does that feeling of, I'm not going to let this happen again, this bulking up, how can that impact us as entrepreneurs?
Gosh, it's such a great question. And there's so many ways that it can impact us. But I feel like I need to take a few steps back to kind of address something first that's really coming up for me right now in relationship to this. And I think that we'll get to your exact question as I go. But
sounds great.
I use this a lot in my practice, so that I'm going to explain it here. But we often operate in a society right now where we fragment ourselves. And what I mean by that is we fragment our experience of ourself, which means that we don't really see ourselves as whole, right? In one interaction, I am the child who is being bullied. In another interaction, I am the entrepreneur who, has had financial trouble, or I have had great success. Or in one other interaction, maybe I am a husband, or I'm a daughter, or whatever it might be. And when you're looking at this or talking about this and saying, like, how does one experience impact me as an entrepreneur? We have to first realize that we're not fragmented. We're not coming at our business just as I am just an entrepreneur. We are coming at everything as this child who was bullied, this daughter, or this person who has had these different experiences that denotes them as failure. right? All of these experiences create parts of ourself that make us a whole. And so it would be wrong to assume or to think that something that happened to you as a child would not impact you as a whole person, and that you don't bring your whole person to different elements of your life, like, say, your business. Of course, we can compartmentalize things. We're really great at doing that. And so it's not to say that you being bullied as a child is going to show up in your business life every single day or in every interaction, but it can create beliefs, right? And you already outlined a belief that it created for you, which was there's not going to be any bullying around me, and no one is going to get bullied around me ever again. And so, how do you navigate people that you come in contact with as an entrepreneur, right? How do you have conversations?
I am very aware of bullying behavior and I really, really don't like it. And maybe someone more calm headed than I would be more tolerant of, let's say, a prospect who might be a bit aggressive in their communication. I mostly just don't even deal with that at all. Where I think if I feel like they're at all have that part of that bullying mindset, I don't want to talk to them at all. Which maybe that's a great business decision. Maybe my sensors are perfectly calibrated to detect bullying, but maybe they're over calibrated. How would I know? Maybe I overreact and push some prospects away who I could really help a lot of people by working with them because I'm so sensitive.
Well, you could say that it's sensitive, or it could say you have a really clear boundary.
Mm.
You have a boundary, and I always say this, that boundaries are often tools to protect us, right? And your boundary and this belief of, like, I will not tolerate this behavior. It reminds me of, and you know this, Brian, my own experience, and we'll talk a little bit about relationships too. I've been in the past really toxic, damaging, manipulative relationships where there was verbal and emotional abuse. And I didn't really realize what was going on in any of those relationships. But over time, I realized that this was a pattern that was showing up in my life elsewhere, that I was later on in a job where I had a very abusive, emotionally and verbally abusive boss. And I have a very similar experience in relating to that trauma, which is like I have zero tolerance for being talked to or treated in any kind of way that feels disrespectful to me. I just will not stand for it. And so that boundary has been created both from a rising from that trauma, but I also see it in this deeper connection, going back to what I said about, we're not fragmented people. We're not just these fragmented parts. We can't think that my experience in my earlier life of being in these abusive relationships does not inform how I am in the world now. It absolutely does. And what I see happening is that part of me, that younger part of me, now gets to be protected by the older, wiser part of me that didn't exist then, that didn't have the protection that I wanted then, that really just, at that time wanted to be loved and accepted and didn't understand how to get that, right? Which you might say the same for your inner child or your young one of that time when you were being bullied.
I love that perspective of your current self, your older, wiser self, going and protecting previous you. A lot of folks listening probably don't know I used to be involved in search and rescue for a while, and there was one mission I went on that was pretty traumatic. And afterwards, I was in with my therapist talking through it, trying to go address the stress injury that particular mission caused in me. And she had me talking about it, but also drawing with crayons on a big sheet of paper. And one of the things I did after I drew out the scene of where the stress injury occurred was literally drawing around me a shield with a different color of crayon. Seems pretty simple, but it's this editing history. It's this protecting the past in the present, which is pretty trippy. But I tell you, that worked, or at least it helped. I think that editing the past, and in that case, it was only a week or 2 weeks later, but going into the past and redefining it really helped me get past that stress injury. And Kari, you were there, so you can speak to how effective that was, but it seemed effective on my side.
Yeah, it definitely was. When we experience things like trauma, there's trauma as a child, right? Like when you were being bullied, you were in middle school, and your sense of protection and your people who protected you were your parents. And that's where you learn protection, right? And so trauma is always formidable, but especially when we're kids, because all of our sense of security comes from outside of ourselves. But it's as we get older as adults that we can change the story and we can find the sense of security within ourselves. And I didn't know this for the longest time, which is why I kept cycling in and out of these abusive relationships, believing that, I don't know, that was just the way it was or that it was what I deserved, not really being able to come out of it and understand a different perspective on myself, a different understanding about myself, and stepping into my own confidence and self-worth and all of that part of my story, but realizing that I could actually go back to those experiences and recognize that younger part of me and see her for what her experience was and what was happening and say, you know what, no more. Like, I will forever protect that part of me. I will forever protect that younger self. And I don't have to allow those things to define every aspect of my life anymore at all, but I will always protect that part of me. I will always stand in a new way because of that.
Middle school me thought I should handle everything on my own. That search and rescue stories from a couple years ago, where me in my 30s harbors no such silly illusions. Do I have a stress injury? I'm going to go see a therapist, just like if I had a broken arm. I'm not going to deal with that on my own. Are you kidding me? That's insane.
Yeah.
I'm going to go get help now if I have a big problem. And I didn't understand that in the same way when I was a child.
Yes, absolutely. And I definitely say and encourage anyone who's experienced trauma to go and get support. And I don't work directly in my life coaching. I don't say like, hey, we're going to work on trauma, but I definitely have experiences with clients where, trauma may be a part of your life, maybe a part of your story, and it may be something that is blocking you or holding you back from stepping into your self-worth or your self-belief. It definitely was for me. And so what I do with clients is to really help them see how they can create that safe space within themselves by being able to change the way they speak to themselves or relate to themselves. And a big part of that comes from really understanding that we're not fragmented people.
Kari, we get to talk pretty much every day of our lives, and yet I have deeply enjoyed this conversation, which I really was intending to be about childhood trauma and how it relates to being an entrepreneur, and which led us to the point of me really wanting to hear your sales pitch for who do you work with in your coaching business, and for people who want to work on some of these issues we're talking about and talk through them. What does that look like?
Yeah. Well, it looks like coming to my site and applying to work with me. I take private clients and I do group coaching a few times a year. And my process looks like working together one-on-one for a few months to start. I ask for a certain month commitment because that's where I see the biggest results. I commit to you, you commit to me, and that's the start of a relationship. And really, I take women through the process of deeply understanding themselves so they can change the way they relate to and see themselves in order to step into what I call grounded confidence and really feeling whole within themselves.
That is beautiful. Folks, if you want to hear more, KariOwens.com. I am biased, but I'm also right. Interacting with Kari's content, you will find yourself living a better life. Thank you for your time, Kari.
Thank you so much. And also you can come say hi to me on Instagram where I hang out a lot at Kari's Full Soul.
Wonderful.